Hey folks, how we doing? Welcome to the stream. Just getting started here. We had unfortunately a last second cancellation from David, so it's going to be just the two of us on this show, but it's still going to be great. Jesse, how you doing? People had a suggestion actually that at the start of the podcast we both say something so that the voices are made clear.
Yeah, hopefully they're clear. So if my voice is clear, I guess, I was the one who really pushed for this particular topic. And the way I thought of it is just that I feel like chess culture has evolved a lot imperceptibly in my lifetime, but that it's really changed in the last year, and that I expect to really find myself pushed into an entirely new world when I go and play what is like 2 weeks from now. I'm going to play in Memorial Day in DC, a big GM Norm tournament. And I don't know what to expect. And so I thought it would be interesting for us to talk about what has changed. And then maybe somewhere down the line, we can kind of collate our experiences and see, how it feels different going forward. I'll just give an obvious example of how it definitely, I think, is going to change. That when I play in 2 weeks, I assume we're not shaking hands anymore.
Right.
We might actually be playing without masks. I don't know. That's still actually up in the air. But the thing with handshakes, it might seem insignificant, but I have never played a classical game of chess without shaking hands first. Never. It was like a sacrament before the game. And I did it since I was a kid, so I didn't think too much about it. But the more I did, I was like, right, with the handshake, you are showing respect to your opponent and to the game. And it's a beautiful ritual. And I remember becoming conscious of it just in the whole Topolov-Kramnik scandal, whenever that was, when they refused to shake hands. I was scandalized by it. So that's just a small way in which the culture is going to change. And, when I was thinking about it, I think the obvious thing that I could think of in terms of something important that's going to shift stuff around is just the idea that demographics are destiny. And that's kind of something you hear in political science, but I think it applies to any culture. And the demographics of chess have shifted wildly. First, even before the pandemic, the game became much more international, with especially China and India joining in. But now we're going to get this huge influx of people. It's a real question for me of like how many women are now going to be playing. And how is that going to change the culture of the game? Like, I never thought of chess as a bro culture, but it certainly was true that basically all of my interactions at tournaments were with dudes. Definitely just the way it was,
Yeah. That's really interesting. If YouTube is any indication, then we should see higher female attendees for chess events. I saw Levy posted a tweet where his intro to chess video has 25% female viewership, which for YouTube is pretty insane for a chess video.
Well, that's funny because I looked right before this podcast, and I think at the beginning of the pandemic we had 0.1% female viewership for our videos, and now we are up to 3.6%, which is still it's startlingly low. And if I was just to guesstimate the amount of women at a given tournament that's not a scholastic tournament, I would guess 2%. I mean, it's really low before the pandemic. And yeah, so it's just a question. I don't know what the participation rate is going to be like. I don't know who's going to come out of the woodwork. And another thing about it too that's really obvious is a lot of people, including our very own DM Hoki, have just been playing chess online, and they've never even been to a tournament. And so maybe the evolution of chess culture is precisely that we don't play in tournaments anymore. That's just one of the many things that could change in the coming years, I guess. But we're going to see it right now. Kostya is going to play in the National Open, which is about a month from now. So we're both going to get a taste. You're going to get a taste of what this new world is like.
Yeah. Do you think there'll be a lot of new online players? Because I feel like there will be. I feel like a lot of players that so far have only played online are actually going to start attending events, and then we'll see some players like basically new that could be like pretty good and strong, and but yeah, never played like a real tournament before.
Right. And I mean, it's just terrifying to the idea that you could have somebody who is either unrated or is very low rated, and all of a sudden, you're dealing with somebody who has a puzzle worst score of 50, and they're rated like 1,700, dude. And so you win nothing if you win, and they win everything if they win. It's a terrifying situation, and I assume that's going to happen. And one of the changes that I think is going to happen is that the general level of play will be dramatically improved. That's my guess. We're going to see how true that is, but that's my guess. Interesting,
because I would think maybe the opposite. I'm worried a lot of people are going to show up like completely out of form, having not played over the board chess in like a long time. For me, especially, part of my prep for Vegas has to be like playing over the board, because I definitely feel very rusty when I'm away for like a couple of months. But this is like insane. It feels like such a distant past that we were actually playing in person. Imagine, guys, like playing a chess game. You're not allowed to like open up other tabs. You're not allowed to even like have your phone with you anymore. You're not even allowed to like talk to anyone. You just gotta be silent for like 4 to 6 hours. I've always felt like it's like a long meditation almost, because you're not talking to anyone the whole time basically. You're just there with your thoughts at the chessboard. So it's a really different experience.
Well, absolutely. And I think for guys like us, no, we're not going to dramatically improve. That's not where the improvement of the general pool of chess players is going to come from, right? It's going to come from these new players who either had a low rating or no rating before this whole thing happened. I've definitely, I probably as you as well. I'll just say, I've been contacted through the pandemic by numerous players who are just beginning and are on some kind of incredible self-improvement quest. I mean, people who are stopping their lives for the most part to play chess, And so, yeah, that's a huge part of the game. And some of them have made big progress,
Yeah. Absolutely. Actually, it reminds me, we really gotta release a video on like chess etiquette at a chessboard, because there are definitely some things that are like cool and not cool, and you gotta like.
That's right. Yeah.
Be careful. Yeah. No arrows, guys. No arrows over the board.
But I feel like the etiquette will definitely evolve with this new set of demographics that are out there. It won't just be the handshake. It'll be all kinds of interesting, subtle things that will change the way we play the game. And there's so many things that have already changed in my lifetime. And I thought I'd just run it off, and maybe you can add it too. So one thing that I think doesn't have anything to do with demographics, but has to do with just the evolution of computer technology, is back in the day, there was a real hero worship thing going on with the top players in the world, especially, let's call it like a Soviet pantheon. There were like certain gods that you bowed down to, and basically you didn't question their judgment for the most part. Now with computers, you got anybody can say, oh, Alekhine played this horrible move,
Right.
And I see that on Twitter all the time. It's just like people criticizing, the old books and stuff, being like, oh, these fools didn't know what they were talking about. What a terrible book. We're like, whoa, I don't know. My old sense of the hierarchy in my mind is like, you can't talk that way about that. You're not qualified to talk that way. But so, right, there's a sense of a hierarchy in the game that is diminished, very much so. It's still a little bit there, but that's really changed. One thing that is indicative of a change that's really interesting about demographics, I think, is, when I was a kid, Kostya, the Soviets were definitely setting the culture. And so, for example, even when I played in the U.S. junior events, like the closed and whatever, it was all these Russian Jewish kids that had come over, immigrant kids. And so, for example, we had what I'd call draw culture, whereas if you could prearrange draws, or there would be like a draw offer on move 10 or 12, and it was a sign of like respect or something. And that's changed dramatically. And Bruce, our friend David Bruce was really one of the first ones to get very angry about it. I mean, he went on a militant mission starting around 2004, and he was calling people out, man. He was flame throwing these people, and the people didn't understand it. They're just like, what? This is always the way we've done it. We don't even understand what you're talking about, David. And so that, to me, was an interesting indicator of how things might come, right? Like that evolution happens, and it made a lot of people angry, and it shifted. The culture definitely shifted. There's no question about it. It shifted dramatically on that issue. And then like a new chess etiquette around just say draw offers and what it means to draw the game early, yada, yada. That all changed. Now that I'm the old guy, very much so, like I just imagine, maybe I'll be the one who's really upset at the kids, I don't know. I could say more, because what are some of in your lifetime, which is, your young life, Kostya, what are the things that you've observed that have changed?
There's quite a bit. I mean, there's also a bunch of stuff to kind of pick up on of what you said. So I want to maybe briefly touch on a few things that I kind of like agree with. Definitely like the introduction of the computer. I mean, just completely changed everything. Now everyone thinks they have like a clue about like what's going on in the game, and it's really easy to like criticize players. Whereas I think like, okay, number one, if you analyze old books and like old notations, instead of criticizing them for like mistakes, I would say like we should be amazed when they get it right. Especially like a lot of like Fischer's games, I thought his analysis was like fantastic, and I would run it through the engine and like just see if it was actually like, if he was correct, like all the calculations he was doing. So I think like people deserve credit, when they actually come up with something that stands like the test of time. And yeah, for sure, like now that we're observing these tournaments all the time, it's so easy to see like who blundered where and like what kind of like silly mistakes players are making. So that's definitely become kind of a trope, like amateurs making fun of the best players in the world for like missing, things and like heavy time pressure or like what have you. The other thing I don't think you mentioned much that I think has already changed before the pandemic is just like the increase, number one, of cheating, but also cheating accusations. Because this is something that started like before the pandemic. I think for a few years now, I feel like there's always some kind of commotion. Someone is always like suspicious of someone else. People are like tracking like who's going to the bathroom, and how many times and stuff. And yeah, I remember like seeing lots of threads like, oh, my opponent went to the bathroom 20 times. Like, is he definitely cheating? Like, and then they like, post the game and people are like analyzing it, and it's, yeah. So that is something I think we should definitely be, try to be careful about, because it's like, I mean, I don't know, again, it's kind of this culture of innocent before proven guilty, but also something to watch out for. And yeah, I mean, if your opponent is being super suspicious during the game and it's like you think they're like checking their phone, or like, you see them with like a device or something, the best thing to do actually just go to the TD and just say like, just tell them your concerns. But yeah, don't make like a huge like public thing about it, because that's how.
Well, not only that, I'll say, one thing that changes for me is I was in a situation before the pandemic where my opponent was leaving the board frequently on his move, and it's unnerving. Whether, I don't want to be thinking about whether the guy's cheating or not. That'll just throw you totally on tilt, man. And you're thinking about all kinds of things you shouldn't be thinking about. And that's definitely part of the evolution of chess culture. There's no longer a sense of, there's just this sense of this other thing in the room that's kind of looking over you. Or if you're playing a game, for example, my games will be broadcast live, and then you know that there's going to be somebody there with their computer analyzing your moves. It's a little bit even in the back of your head. Another thing along those lines, Peter Svidler was talking about this on the Perpetual Chess podcast. And this is something I've definitely observed, is back in the day, after a hard-fought game, didn't matter when it finished, you would go and you would analyze with your opponent, and you talk about some of the things that you saw during the game. And it could last 10 minutes, it could last a couple hours, this analysis session. That's where a lot of us really got good, honestly, were those analysis sessions. It was great to, hang out with maybe a stronger player or just hear somebody else's, how they saw the game. And now with the computer, there's kind of a sense among even strong players of like, well, I'm just going to end up looking on the computer right away anyway. Right. Which isn't how I do it, but I know that there are many players who do it that way, and that's led to the demise of the culture of looking at the game after. And it was kind of like, let's say 10 years ago, but definitely 20 years ago, it was a social expectation that you went and looked at the game after. You took a little set or something, went to the Skittles room, and then other players would come watch, and they would start talking, and you get a whole scene going on, and it was great. It was great, but that's, I think, for the most part gone. So that's another change.
Yeah, well, I feel like these guys, they want to be efficient. You only have so much time after the game, and so they probably just want to spend like all their time preparing for the next game. So their seconds, they just like do the work for them. They're like, oh yeah, on this and this and this, like you missed this and this, right? And then they're like, okay, on to the next game. I'm totally with you, but like, okay, in the United States, we also have to say, just like the typical schedule of 2 rounds a day just makes it impossible to like do a postmortem and then have time to like rest and recover for the next game. So in Europe, it's different because you have 1 round a day, and that was one of my favorite things about the Reykjavik Open, is that there was definitely a culture there. Even as recently as like 2018, 2019, of after the game going to like the cafe. It's like right next to the cafe or bar. They have like a Skittles area. You can get something to eat or drink, and they have a bunch of boards there, and you can analyze with your opponent. And people do it, and a lot of times you see like you'll see Shirov sitting there analyzing with his opponent. Shout out to Shirov, the guy like loves analyzing games. He'll actually like walk around and like kibitz on other people's games, and I mean it's just like incredible. So that's like a very cool thing, and yeah, I've definitely learned quite a bit from some of those analysis sessions after a game. Like I played a GM or IM, and then we look at the game, and then I see the difference between what I saw and what they saw, and it's just so instructive for me just to see like, wow, like they didn't care about this line, they thought this line was important. Like that was always some of the most useful feedback I could get. So I would encourage you guys to try and do a postmortem with your opponent, even though the engine is just going to show you the answer later anyway. But you can definitely learn from each other's ideas.
Another interesting thing about that is, chess in the United States has always been 2 rounds a day. But even back in the day, and I got to say, back in the day, it was much slower of time controls. Now we're doing basically a normalized time control of 90 minutes plus 30-second increment. And back in the day, you would almost always have a second time control, often a third time control. So it'd be like 2 hours for 40 moves, then you get another hour for the next 20 moves, and then 30 minutes sudden death, something like that. I would say that was like a very typical time control. And even then, you people would go and analyze after. And that brings me, I think, maybe to what might be the biggest change in chess culture is that was happening before the pandemic, but I think the pandemic accelerated it, is that chess has become faster, and maybe it's simply become an online phenomenon. So, for example, I'm this old guy and I'm going back to play this tournament. And for me, that's real chess. It's the over-the-board chess. But for this new group of people who's never even played over-the-board chess, like DM Hokie, why for them is over-the-board chess real chess? Why does that need to be real chess for them? And for example, in my little framework, if there's an important rating, it's really only the FIDE rating, or if you're not that high rated, it's the USCF rating. Those are the only ratings that are important. But now, it's this really interesting thing. You hang out on chess.com and I did that whole ridiculous 2,700 quest. And I'm sitting there on an analysis board with Eugene Perelstein the other day, and the poor guy's got a rating of like 2,500. And I'm like, I'm just a gorilla compared to this dude. Or you see like David Bruce's rating, he's fallen back into like 2,350. He's stinking up the dojo. He won't fix it. And it's like, there's a certain sense in which if you leave it that way long enough, you just play online long enough, that will become like the rating. Like, what is your like little blitz rating on chess.com or Lee Chess or something like that? And I think for us here at the dojo, that's not the reality we promote or would like to have. But I think we have to acknowledge, like when I say we're going back to real chess, I don't know if that's the real chess anymore. Maybe it's not. I'd like to believe it is, but I'm not sure, Kostya. I don't know. That's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this, so we can compare notes afterwards,
Well, yeah, it's a very interesting question. There's a couple of differences, I think, right now between online chess and over-the-board chess in terms of the prestige. Number one, you don't have like huge prizes for online tournaments like you do for like the World Open, Chicago Open, like these huge events, these big opens like all over the world. The only like big money events are the ones for professional players, and it's likely just because we have no perfect solution for cheating. And the assumption is if we have huge open tournaments open to everyone, people are just going to find all kinds of ways to cheat, right? If we give them a big enough financial incentive. Whereas over the board, it's like, if you cheat in an over the board tournament, you're there in person, like you're taking on a lot of risk to do that. Regardless, people have still tried. But yeah, the other thing is that there's not also like official titles like Grandmaster, Master. At least they have some online titles already. Like I know FIDE has been trying to do like their online arena thing, but it feels very shady and very sketchy. Because I saw an ad where apparently like to get the online IM title, your rating needs to be 1,700. So that just seems like very strange. So they're just giving it out at that point, and like GM was something like 2,100. Yeah, so it's very like I don't really get it. It's confusing.
Well, maybe this could be actually. I just came up with this now. I kind of like this comparison. For example, in the finance world, we have national currencies, dollar, euro, yen, and then let's call those the traditional currencies, which are comparable to, say, a FIDE rating or a USCF rating. And then you have all these cryptocurrencies that are coming up, right? And no one knows what to bet on or what to buy, but they seem like a viable alternative. Maybe, we don't know. And in a way that's maybe comparable to my just emotional feel to this, where to me, the currency is like a FIDE rating, or like you're saying, something like a GM title. But all of these other things are coming on board. And then some people, like with the cryptocurrencies, they have very strong allegiances. Like some people are like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Dogecoin, and some of them might even have started up as a joke, but then turn into a real thing, and like as somebody who, and just dealing with money, I have no idea. If those things are going to become a real deal. No idea. In a similar way, I don't know whether like the Lee Chess rating is something going to be something, or the chess.com rating. No idea. But I think that, I know pretty certainly that when people out there for the last year who have committed themselves to this game in record numbers, giving a lot of toil to their own self-improvement, they, of course, have just been focused on those crypto ratings. The crypto ratings, Coach, I just created that. They've been focused on the crypto ratings, and why not? Of course they are. Yeah.
No, that's a really funny comparison, because there are some similarities. Because it's, I mean, like, the argument always goes like crypto, it's like not really based on anything, but neither is like regular money. We just kind of accept that it's money. But like the system of crypto actually makes a lot of sense. Like it has its advantages, it has its like securities, and the idea of the blockchain definitely feels like kind of like the future and seems like a much better way of doing things. And maybe the online ratings are a much better way of doing things, because like after all, you play more games online. It is kind of it gives you more quantity of games to work with in terms of representing your strength. It's still very different to traditional chess, but like, yeah, in some ways it could totally take over as being what we count as real chess.
And the other part of the metaphor that I hadn't realized before this, of course, is that when you're dealing in national currencies, if I want to send money to Europe, I have to pay some kind of fee. If I want to exchange money, I have to pay some kind of fee. So there's like a pain barrier when I want to deal with that kind of stuff. And similarly, or even more so with over-the-board chess, it's expensive and it's time consuming. I'm going to have to go to a hotel. I have GM privilege, so I don't have to pay an entry fee. Maybe I get a small appearance fee. But I know as when I was an IM, I was paying a lot of money to like attend these events and yada, yada. And so that's the other thing about online chess. It's more egalitarian and it's just easier, much easier to do.
Yeah, 100% more accessible. But if we can't solve the cheating problem, I think people will never take it seriously. So I think that is kind of a serious issue about it. Because I just feel like as soon as you start giving out big prizes and like real titles are made available online, I think that will definitely encourage people to cheat, and it'll be very hard to catch everyone. You'll have false accusations. So like, I don't know, we have to come up with some kind of like real solution for that. Maybe all the official events, you just have to play with like 2 cameras. So that lowers the accessibility, but increases the security. Like if you want to play in an official event, you got to have a front-facing camera and camera behind you. You got to share your screen the whole time. And that way, okay, it's like very difficult to cheat under those circumstances.
I don't think it's that hard, buddy. I mean, you just have to hook up some other device that's not in the field of view. I feel like cheating in a normal tournament too. I don't think it's that hard. I really don't think it's that hard. So like to cast it, to frame it like it's safe in the over the board environment. I mean, Rousey's took it over the top with like the phone. But the thing is, like the instruments are getting even smaller than the phone. And all you need, if you're a reasonably strong player, is just some hints once in a while. You just need a hint. You just need somebody to tell you to think about this move, or somebody throws you a sign for like N for knight, or I don't know. You don't need much for it to radically change the game. So I don't know. I don't feel that over the board tournaments are safe from it either. I mean, I get it. It feels a lot safer. And frankly, that's the other thing we got to talk about culture, because we've seen at the dojo, and I've seen as a teacher, we had a great incident just recently where I was teaching and we were just analyzing, and my student was cheating with the computer. And it's become so prevalent for people to cheat who aren't criminals. These are not criminal people. These are people who can't resist. And I think once you have that culture of you can't resisting, then you think everybody else can't resist, and then you will feel entitled to do it yourself. And so why not then do it in a regular tournament, Oh man, yeah. I think that's a big question of chess culture. Is obviously we've had during the pandemic, we've had the question of how do sites like chess.com and Lichess crack down on the cheaters? The overall answer has to be at this point that they haven't done that much, right? They haven't done that much, and they have not been effective about it. But that's all going to bleed into that's going to be a continuing thing that they're going to work on, but it's going to bleed into the over the board experience. For sure. I feel, yeah.
Now there is a suggestion that people could play online, but like in person at some kind of local club. And that's actually how they used to do it for the U.S. Chess League.
Right.
Where to play in the U.S. Chess League, you had to play publicly and with some kind of recognized arbiter. Like they needed an actual arbiter's title from, I think, either FIDE or USCF. There was some requirement. That was still, I feel like, wasn't perfect because in theory, the arbiter could just be in on it if it's just someone that everyone knows on the team. And that's like the team could still be like cheating. But if everyone is like playing in public, or if you imagine like a big space where, it's like 50 people playing a chess tournament, they're all on their computers, but they're all being, I guess, like observed to some sense, then yeah, that would be really hard to pull off cheating there. So maybe there are some hybrid opportunities indeed.
But Kostya, I would say my memory of that, when we played U.S. Chess League, we played the Mechanics Institute, and we were just off on I don't know how else you would organize it too. We were just like off in some little hidden corner of the club with our computer there, and it would have been the easiest thing in the world to cheat.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. How it was ran, it was still like open, like definitely less likely if like the whole team has to be kind of like in on it. And there were some cases of cheating in the U.S. Chess League, 100%. But I think some kind of like public option could be a really good opportunity, or just ban all computers. Just that's it. No more. Take Stockfish down. Just ban it all. That could be another solution.
I think another thing about culture, that it's really a thing about culture, is if the cases of cheating, let's say just online for a moment, if they were few and far between, then what would have happened is we would have radically punished those people. But because it's so prevalent, because the list of people who have done it is so extreme, sites like chess.com have been like, dude, we can't. And there's no upside for us. There's no upside for us because when every time you accuse somebody of cheating, they're going to freak out because they're going to be like, even if they did it, they're going to be like, no, I didn't do it, man. What are you saying? Dude, with my student, I was like, dude, you're obviously cheating. And he was like, no, I'm not. What are you saying? He ended up admitting it to me, bro. He admitted it to me later. And it was just like, oh man. Yeah. So it's a really interesting problem there. I think everything to do with culture. And it's funny too, in my mind, when I was thinking about this podcast, I was talking about demographics as destiny. And that's definitely true. We could definitely talk about gender and how that might shift things. But gotta say, also just technology is destiny. Like when you look at cheating, like the Rousey's thing was only possible because the development of the iPhone, which I remember seeing for the first time in 2007, right? Without that little phone, there's no way. So it's actually a pretty recent development, and people couldn't afford those phones, the general public, till 2010 or something like that. So like that technological shift is something that I think changed everything. And I just assumed that all the devices are getting smaller and smaller. Like I think you could probably get a great computer on your Apple Watch, dude. Why not? I don't know why not.
Yeah, you could. No, I think a lot of the official FIDE tournaments, like the Olympiad and stuff, they've banned like pens. It's like you can't have your own pen anymore because I think there's apparently something you can do with a pen. So yeah, well, it's going to be different. And then again, it's going to be like a lot more cheating accusations. And I mean, already like over the past couple of years, you see people posting their opponents' accuracy scores, like on Facebook and Twitter and stuff. And they're like, oh, my opponent had, 97% accuracy score. Like
Yeah.
post the game, and it's just like that's just gonna keep happening, and I don't know. It's it feels kind of slimy, but what can you do?
Well, because let me just shift a little bit. Do you feel that chess culture heretofore was especially masculine, just given that everybody was dudes, or did it not feel that way to you?
What do you mean? What do you mean by like masculine as it comes to like a culture?
Well, it's fair enough. It's it's a hard enough thing to define what we mean by that. But I think I've done a number of activities in my life that were mostly dudes. Like, for example, I've done a lot of bike riding, and that's almost always there's women in there, but it's a largely dudes. And I don't think of. I haven't witnessed a lot of what I'd call bro culture within the chess community, but there is some weird, there's definitely some, well, it's interesting. Like, one of the things about demographics and gender is like the Russian players, especially back in the day, but even now, like they're very aware of chess as like a masculine game, and it being a kind of warfare that is dark and dirty and kind of full of sexual innuendo anyway. To have a different sense of it. Growing up, I didn't come up with that until I started playing with him. And then actually when I played with him, I was like, right, this is a whole nother level. This is a whole other way of thinking about the game. So that's something different, I feel, with the Eastern European countries, in terms of they definitely see it as a masculine game, even though there's a lot of the most successful women players come out of the Eastern Bloc countries still. But I guess, it's got to have amounted to something. It would seem a strange statement to say, well, we have had, for at least Jesse's whole lifetime, every chess tournament being basically 99% dudes, and to say that culture isn't masculine would be it'd be like, no, obviously it had to be.
Feels you like might not be, over time.
You might not have noticed it, and that might actually be the thing that'll change. Like, maybe we'll get some interesting changes just in the fact that women maybe will come to the game. I don't know. We're going to see. But that's part of my question. Like, maybe that's just a blind spot that I have, thinking that it's not a masculine game. But you just step back a second. You're like, 99% dudes? It's gotta be, gotta be.
Yeah. I think that kind of makes sense. And I don't know. I mean, it can create problems. It's definitely, there's like, we see like misogyny and this kind of thing in the chess world. I don't know if it's like more or less compared to like other communities. Like, chess is always compared with like poker and like esports. It's actually one part of chess culture we haven't really talked about yet, that it's just becoming more and more of an esport, and that's how people see it, for better or worse. I think in all these communities there's definitely like issues surrounding that. So it's hard to say like how much chess is better or worse. In terms of like the toxicity in chess, I honestly feel like it's less than in other spaces. And I mean, I've been like a chess player my whole life, so it's hard for me to judge exactly, but I do feel like in general, chess community is like more welcoming than compared to not necessarily other communities, but just like I think people can be really toxic in other environments. And I don't know. I've always actually seen the chess community as being one of the nicer ones, despite having its issues, of course, and its bad apples.
Well, I think one of the things that's weird about it from our perspective, Kostya, is like that both of us are kind of like even though the hierarchy has been lessened through the advent of computers, this hierarchy in the chess world still kind of exists. And we, I think, are treated, we might not notice it, but we're treated differently when we come to a tournament. And, just people are welcoming. They're like, oh, do you need a place to stay? Do you need something? Blah, blah, blah. Or they'll kind of want to talk to you a little bit. And I know that for people who are just starting out, whether it's in the YouTube channel or you go to a tournament, and they can be rough, I think, when you're at the bottom of this supposed totem pole that kind of exists in people's minds or doesn't exist in some people's minds. And then, there's a real toxicity in any totem pole, right? Whether it's chess or another culture, you're going to have a hierarchy, and it's going to feel like somebody's pushing you down. Like, you don't know what you're talking about, Kostya.
But that is the cool thing about chess is that I think you made this point, like, ultimately there's very little gatekeeping because it's all decided over the board.
No, absolutely.
Like, if you're a good player, like, no one can deny you anything in chess. And I think being good actually earns you a lot of respect. Like, one example I think about, I don't know if it's correct or not, it's just an idea, but like, I think Fischer has or gets a lot of respect from like Russian players and people from the Soviet Union, even the ones that were like playing against him. And you would think he would be like hated, like a huge rival, but I feel like they just had such a tremendous respect for his play. Like they had kind of like no choice but to like him, at least for his chess playing.
Right.
And so that's kind of the nice thing is that like, yeah, you don't need any kind of like special invites. You definitely need financial opportunities to like really play a lot of chess and travel to tournaments and stuff. But yeah, ultimately, if you have the skill, it's like the path is there for you.
I wonder too, because it's actually thinking about the Russian players now. Like, I think there's this. You could probably speak to this better than I can, but there's this thing where they were so dominant for so long. And honestly, if it weren't for Magnus, they would probably still have been dominant all those years. And when I say Soviet, I mean, like say Topalov is still part of the Eastern Bloc tradition. And now that they have lost that center of gravity, it's not like there's still a big center of gravity there, but right, like this huge explosion of the game, which we're going to see in the next couple of years to what extent it's changed even more than before the pandemic, but definitely even before the pandemic, right? We have all this huge communities that are so big, especially when I think about chess explosion, I think about India in the last year. When you look just at like the Twitch streamers from India who are doing their thing and the numbers of people that they're getting on their Twitch stream, it's just been like, oh man, what a huge number of people that just the game is exploding. Anyways, when I think about those guys and I wonder what kind of resentment they're going to be feeling, and I think a symbolic aspect of that is coming out now, where this really interesting, bizarre psychological thing where Nepo can't play under the Russian flag because of the Russian cheating in other sports. Mm-hmm. Man, that's pretty intense, man, to not like have your flag there. And I think there's deep resentment there, and it has, so many levels, but the interesting one to me, the like deeper one is like the sense of chess being taken away, right? Taken away from the Eastern Bloc and moved elsewhere. From a like when I was a kid, let's just say even though Fischer had happened, it was still a unipolar universe. There was one center of gravity. That was it. And now it's like, oh man, it's everywhere. Absolutely everywhere.
Interesting. Well, I saw some people saying the Nepo thing, I mean, it's just like more like ceremonial in terms of punishment. It's not like a real, it's just like, what does it matter? Like, it doesn't actually hurt him in any way. It just seems like kind of like a symbolic slap on the wrist, or honestly, I didn't even get it. Like, I don't know. It's kind of hard to understand.
Oh, I think it's very significant in a lot of ways. Like, first of all, there's a great a documentary, I think it's on Netflix, called Icarus. And it's about the Soviets cheating. And that Olympic cheating that they've been doing forever in a very aggressive way has led to this ban. They, of course, deny it, like all cheaters. They deny it vociferously. So there's that denial of, and then feeling like they're being unfairly impinged upon. And then I got to say, too, let's just say I am not like the world's most patriotic dude, but if I had to, if I made it somehow to some top stage, even if it wasn't the world championship, and then I couldn't like have a flag. No, that's a serious thing, man. That's very psychological. And I think for Russians, it's like, what? This is our guy. This is like, he doesn't really have a chance against Magnus, but at least let him show the Soviet colors, man. Let him show the Soviet school of chess or something. Yeah, I think it's symbolic, at least, of the shift for me away from the Soviet Union. And the Soviet cheating thing, too, which goes into all these other questions of cheating, which is, so dark and hard to understand. And, when we're talking about cheating, we're talking about online cheating. But of course, the Soviets, and then perhaps probably also later, just the way that the KGB evolved into the FSB, it didn't really change that much in terms of how they operate. So like that level of cheating is its own, whole dark thing. And like, One question of cheating, this is another thing about chess culture that I assume is going to change, is people taking drug enhancement. People swear by modafinil. I don't know. People have all kinds of, but I think, if I was some guy in the FSB, I'd be like, okay, Nepo, we've developed these drugs, buddy, and here we go. Here's your chance, buddy.
Sounds like a Marvel movie. Okay, I want to stick on this Nepo thing because, I guess, okay, now what I don't understand, it's like if it's meant to punish like the Russian government, because I'm definitely going to watch Icarus because I don't know a ton about that story. It sounds like they're punishing Nepo. It's like, if it's a punishment to Nepo, I don't know if Nepo cares about this or this sanction or not. Let's say he does. Like, what's the point of punishing him? Chess is not even in the Olympics. It's like, I don't.
Well, I think, okay, I don't know all the fine details, but it's roughly like this. FIDE forever, decades now, has been trying to get chess to be an Olympic sport.
Right.
And it's precisely this Olympic ban on the Soviets that's created this little drama where he can't use his flag. Right. So, that's where it's coming from. And does he care? I don't know. He probably pretends he doesn't care. I don't know how you wouldn't care. If you'd feel singled out, you'd be like, I didn't cheat. Why are you doing this to me?
Right.
I'm just some dude.
Right.
Like in a lot of Russians, what Russians love to say is they say, oh, I'm not political. That's the Russian key line. Almost every Russian I meet says that, oh, I'm not political. Everybody's political, buddy. But that's the thing. That's the way the Russians like to talk about it, to get out of it.
Interesting. Huh. It's, I don't know, kind of weird thing. I wish him the best. Anyway, people are asking whether you can actually dope in chess. I remember seeing some article on ChessBase saying that they did a study comparing, I think it was like Adderall to caffeine, and basically the study concluded that there wasn't any real difference in the benefit. Like, caffeine is about as helpful as taking Adderall. Just very anecdotally, what I remember from reading that thing was that they said that people who are on Adderall or something similar, they just got lost in thought. So they might have improved their focus for the chess game, but their time management was horrible because they would get lost in thought. They would spend too long on many moves. And so ultimately their performance didn't really improve that much in a chess game.
The other thing with modafinil, I thought they proved it. It basically was 10 to 20% improvement.
But caffeine is also 10%.
Yeah, I'd be interested in a deeper study of the caffeine about the temperature. I will say this for myself, for example, if they banned caffeine, I don't know if it would actually impinge on my chess, but I do know that it would affect my psychological well-being in the game because
I would never play again if they banned caffeine.
I enjoy it too. There's one of my few pleasures left in life is to either analyze chess or play chess with a nice cup of coffee. There's not much better that I get, right now. That's the state of my life right there, Kostya.
Yeah.
It doesn't get much better than that. I have a neurologist friend, and I talked to him about the modafinil, and I was going to try it. I would try, I'll try anything once. But he talked me out of it by saying that it will help you because what it does is it makes you really interested in whatever it is you're doing. So they would lose on time because they were so interested in what they were doing. So their calculation got much better. Their vision got much better, but they sometimes got so deep into it that they, lost sight of the clock. But even so, they definitely improved their performance. Anyways, he talked me out of it by saying that it does something to your receptors, so like after you take the modafinil, you'll be at a lower level than you were before, something like that. Like it burns the receptors. Ghost, you don't do it. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Jesse, we have, I think, about like maybe 5 minutes left. We got some questions from Twitter. Maybe we could do a rapid fire.
Sure.
You could just give your quick take. So first one from Scott. Is chess culture similar or different in major chess playing nations like China, India, this former Soviet bloc, and the West?
We touched on it a little bit before. I feel like the Soviet bloc countries, it's a respected part of the culture. It's something that no one's going to think of you as a nerd if you do it. It's a very, if you're a chess champion, you're kind of this very masculine, macho dude. And that's the way they see themselves. Whereas here in the States, no one ever walked down the schools of the high school with me and being like, oh, that's one macho dude. No, that's not the way I was seen, Kostya. That wasn't the way it was. Nor were the people who were attracted to chess in the United States. We were kind of like the D&D bros, back in the day. It was a totally different group of kids who got attracted to the game in the first place anyway. Yeah. And I think one of the interesting questions going forward, Scott, is just with this community in India and China, their numbers are essentially, I think, just like the numbers in India of people playing now. We'll see how it is over the board, but they are so extreme that it just like it overwhelms the rest of the West and the Soviet bloc, just in terms of sheer numbers. I think that's my sense right now of the numbers, and we'll see how that develops in the next year. But it is an extreme amount of people that have taken up the game.
Correct me if I'm wrong. India got their first GM in like 1980 something, wasn't it?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Wasn't it Anand? Wasn't Anand the first?
No.
It wasn't the first,
I don't think so. No, it wasn't the first. I'm going to guess Barua. I can't pronounce the guy's name, but I think that guy or somebody like that. Yeah.
But it was very recent. Oh, Barua. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it was very recent, like 1980s.
I called it, dude. That was just a guess, Kostya, I guess. But some chat is
good stuff. I wasn't sure. But now they have, I think, close to something like 70. So they're like, just way up. Anand, of course, like hugely responsible for the chess boom. I believe Ramesh was saying that he became a professional because of Anand's success. Maybe I'm getting all this wrong. I'm sorry. I apologize. I remember Ramesh saying that Anand's success was very like influential for him personally.
Yeah.
But the Fischer boom, I think, had tons of players started playing. I don't know if it produced a ton of GMs, but now India has this like almost like their own chess school where I think they have like a big system, like where they have just a lot of tournaments, a lot of juniors, and a lot of their players are just like sponsored by the government and companies there. I feel like more than the US does. As far as I know, like we don't have the top 10, 20 players in the US getting sponsored by like companies and being paid salaries and getting their like expenses paid and things like this.
I think you have to say that Sarawan is a product of Fischer Boom, Christensen, the Fermian, all those guys were products of the Fischer Boom for sure. Yeah, they wouldn't have been playing without the Fischer Boom. Kostya, we got a question here. I'll ask you since you put me on the spot. This is from Shula von Kaisa about the chess culture of achieving equality for black. How do you feel about that? Has that become a thing in the recent years?
Yeah, that was an interesting question. Well, I think it was, why has the culture of trying to equalize with black become disgusting? So kind of an assumption hidden in the question. I clarify, I think he's referring to the fact that, nowadays, most of the top players, they just try to equalize with black. They're playing the Berlin, the Petrov, the Queen's Gambit declined. I remember I was very sad when Rajabov switched from his King's Indian to just playing like the QGD every game, then Naka did the same. I was very sad when this happened. I mean, it's understandable, and I don't think fans are particularly disgusted by it. Ultimately, I do think it's really up to white these days to dictate how much action they want in a game more than it is up to black. So if someone wants to take a risk in a chess game, I think it's going to be the person who moves first. And I think people do notice like when someone is making like really quick draws with white versus someone who is always playing for the win, and then the results are whatever. But I think you can definitely tell by like the opening choices, like who is definitely playing for the advantage from the get-go and who is really just trying to play it like super safe. Oh, apparently people saying Anand was the first GM, so double correction there.
Well, it was. I was right. There was something like Brewer. Vish Chess is on it over here. I think one thing to add, I'll put it just for my own context. I think with the computer, the thing, it's not so much about equality, I would say, but like it's really, it's hard to go against the computer when you're doing your opening prep. And I'll just give you an example. The Benoni has really fallen out of favor because the computer hates the Benoni. I mean, despises the Benoni. So it's really hard psychologically to then play it because you're just like, oh, the computer says I'm lost, so I'm lost. And it's not just the Benoni, but there's a number of ways to say get a Benoni structure or to get a structure that has less space. And when the computer tells you that, it's really hard. And of course, it ends up affecting your game. And the computer, it's been doing this for well over 20 years now, but it's affected the way we think about the game. And, I grew up talking about white's a little bit better, white's clearly better. And now you ask players and they'll say, oh, it's like 0.4, they'll put it in the computer terms. So they've already switched their thinking. And the values of the computer, especially like respect for the bishop, space, those are coming through in the way people are playing. And so to go against the computer is partly why people are then, I think, especially the top players, following some kind of, let's call it drawing variation, which honestly, I'm not sure ultimately will pay off in terms of statistical results, just because you play that way,
Yeah, I mean, we saw Magnus switch to a super dynamic Sveshnikov repertoire for the World Championship match against Caruana, which typically World Championship matches have this culture 100%. Like any loss is such a blow that you really try to be super solid with black. So he completely switched it up, took on a much more dynamic set of positions, and I would say really improved his chess. Like the next year he was completely like winning everything, and even for Magnus, like just looking like invincible for him. But I think the computer is certainly going to affect things. Now, of course, we have like the new AI engines that are suggesting like H4, A4, A5, H5 in every position, and that has certainly affected the openings that are being played. Actually a lot of stuff, especially that's changed over the board in terms of the opening choice, and people now, I attribute it to Carlsen actually getting like the really safe position from the opening and then just trying to play a really long 80 move game and try trying to grind people out. But that's definitely something that's feels like has changed in recent years too.
Mm-hmm. Another one, Kostya, is this. Al-Qaid writes that how can the U.S. build a chess culture when most FIDE GM tournaments are in Europe? And I want to just say that's been a shift that's happened in the last 20 years, where we do now have many norm events. It used to be back in the day, it was very difficult. And Proust was organizing GM norm tournaments in the bottom of church basements, man. That we were playing in the basements of some strange places. We were doing it back in the day. But for example, I'm playing in a GM norm tournament in DC in 2 weeks. Coach is playing one in a month, and there are many. And a lot of it has to do with more people involved in the game in the United States, and also more money, especially with the St. Louis Chess Club.
Yeah, there is a little bit of. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it used to be harder. Nowadays, there's definitely a lot more norm events in the U.S. than there used to be. I remember when I was maybe 21, 2200, I wasn't really thinking about norm events yet, but everywhere I saw, I would always read like, oh yeah, if you want a norm, you have to go to Europe. Or like, if you really want to make IM or GM, got to go to Europe, got to play in like Hungary or some of these places with like just tournaments like every week. Czech Republic, another one has like a tournament every week over the summer. That's like a 9-round event. And now it's gotten a lot better. Although I feel like FIDE is always introducing rules to make it harder. Like, so first they made that rule where like you have to play some foreign players in the event. Can't all be all from one country. I don't know if that was specifically anti-US or whatever. But recently, last couple of years, they introduced a rule that one of your GM norms has to be a 6-day event. Just out of nowhere, they just introduced this rule. One of the norms has to be a 6-day event. And that seems like an anti-US thing, because we're the only place that has like 5-day norm events. All over the world, most of the norm events are like 9 days long, right? Because they just do 1 round a day. We're the only place that does like 2 rounds a day for norm events. Maybe Canada as well. But they don't have as many norm events up there. So now one of the GM norms has to be 6 days or more. So good luck.
Yeah, and shout out also to Charlotte. Chess Gains is mentioning Charlotte, and I'll probably play an event down there as well. Very surprising too, Charlotte. It just started, and it's like boom, we got a second big U.S. chess center where norm events are happening. A lot of them too. A lot of them.
Yeah, Charlotte is doing some great stuff with the norm events. So yeah, all right, Jesse. I think that maybe wraps it up.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll just end in saying at some point it would be fun to do this in a bit. I don't know if it's 6 months, a year, but just kind of reflect on what over-the-board chess looks like, feels like, and is it number one? Is it like the currency of the chess world, or have the cryptocurrencies of Lichess and chess.com ratings, have those taken over as the standards for what people are trying to achieve? Right? Like when people think of chess achievement, are they thinking of a chess.com rating, or are they thinking of like a FIDE rating with a title attached to their name?
Right.
That's part of the question going forward, I think.
Oh, and real quick, people were asking like, what are some etiquette things that online players might not know? Let me mention it here so that it gets a wide reach.
Yeah.
Guys, I think the biggest difference that might screw someone over is touch move. You know, online, you can click on a piece, pick it up, move it around, draw arrows, do whatever you want. Over the board, guys, if you touch a piece, you are committed to moving it. And if you put it on a square and let go, that's your move. So be very careful. Don't be like just moving your pieces all around, because you will get called on it. If your piece is like off the center of the square and you want to adjust it, you just have to say adjust verbally out loud so your opponent hears it, so they understand, and then move it back, and then it's very clear. Yeah, which piece do you touch first to castle? Always go with the king. Castling is kind of a king move, and if you put your king on g1, like moving 2 squares, there's no ambiguity there. It's clear what you're trying to do, compared to if you move the rook first. So yeah, no takebacks, guys, and don't touch a piece until you're ready to move it. And hit the clock with the same hand, guys. Hit the clock with the same hand. Have some respect for the game.
Well, here's actually, I'll end an etiquette thing that I can imagine changing. Before, it was very clear with chess etiquette that and a lot of American players didn't get this, but you are not allowed to offer, first of all, you cannot offer a draw twice. And really, if you're playing a stronger opponent, this is the thing to do with the hierarchy. You don't offer a draw unless you are significantly better. If it's an equal position, just don't do it. I've noticed, though, that could change with the etiquette. I've noticed that because people don't understand, and if enough people don't understand, then the culture will just evolve to that point of, not understanding that bit of chess culture, because that's really what it is. It's not something that's ever really enforced. Like, there has actually been a time I told an arbiter to tell a dude to stop offering me a draw, but in general, it's not something that the arbiter's in control of. It's a cultural thing about the game.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to do another episode on chess etiquette. Actually, I think we could talk a whole show about it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. And if anybody has topics they'd like us to cover, we're trying to do this podcast once a week. If we don't get to it every week, that's okay. But roughly once a week, we'd like to do it.
We'll catch you guys soon. Thanks to everyone for subbing, donating, and we'll see you guys in a bit.
Bye.